The story of today's manhwa begins on something similar. A small group moves forward despite the bad weather and a large amount of snow underfoot. Suddenly, the foot of one of those who walked at the end begins to fall sharply down, foreshadowing a bad ending for this copy of The Long Dark. It turns out there is a gorge below. Trying to escape, the man grabbed his friend by the leg, endangering not only himself but also the group members. Helping them was a very difficult task. Realizing that it would be almost impossible for the two of them to escape, Nakama began to insist that the crazy comrade stop dragging someone else down with him. However, the man simply did not want to die and asked not to leave him because he was already hanging with all his strength. Being on the bottom was a terrible nightmare for him now. But no one shared his hopes because their group had been looking for this place for many years. No one plans to die with this bastard, especially before doing something great. Having unclenched their fingers, the other travelers could only watch as their friend fell down and screamed loudly, hoping that his former allies would die next. But before the loser's hand sank too low, some high-speed grandfather who would not yield even to the snail turbo easily manages to grab the falling man by the hand. In just a few moments, he covered a huge distance, allowing their Nakama to continue their journey to heaven together. The old man was sure that regardless of position or age, it was necessary to try to save anyone who could at least be tried to be saved. Soon the poor guy was able to stand on his own 2 feet again. They were far behind the group, so they had to follow the tracks left behind. The guy turned to Daozhang, saying that his strength was not enough to overcome the remaining path, and he was ready to give up his dream, forgetting about the therapy Naruto had given him earlier. Ascension to God and all other higher blessings were not of interest to the man. He just wanted to live the rest of his life calmly and quietly, away from problems and threats. After listening to the guy's opinion, Daozhang turned to him. He understood the man's position. But the only truth is that a person has no control even over his own destiny. Not everyone deserves a quiet life. The modern world has shown how terrible people truly are. Recently, a man had to see this for himself when everyone abandoned him at the first test. The only thing one could rely on was oneself and divine powers, so giving up before achieving the goal simply did not make sense, so the old man believed. Behind the huge and immense emptiness was that same western land, Vinland. The detachment looked with genuine admiration at the meadows and forests not covered with snow. According to legend, heat and cold will not have power over the Kunlun Mountains as long as there is at least one drop of starlight in them. In this place, it was impossible to succumb to envy. This place was considered a real refuge of the gods. Everyone hoped to finally meet those whom they had served so faithfully for many years. It was extremely unusual to see stars from below rather than from above, and the sun's rays coming into contact with this matter also caused unusual visual effects. A huge whale suddenly jumped out of the water, remembering Re:Zero. It begins to seem as if getting involved with such things is not always a good idea. But instead of attacking, the creature abruptly returned into the depths of the lake as quickly as it had appeared at all, forcing all members of the expedition to ask many questions to themselves. Flying birds of blue color flew between them, gradually returning back to the stars. When it was finally over, none of the followers of the gods could move or take even a breath, and soon they began to completely crumble. After just a moment, most of the people who came from far away completely turned into nothing. No one could even do anything, as if they had arrived on the island from a hellish paradise. And just like in last year's fruit, amazingly beautiful flowers gradually began to sprout from their bones, covering the clearing with a red veil. However, people's lives were not completely ended. After some time, they rose up in the form of undead. The cycle of decomposition, restoration, and resurrection was finally completed. But not everyone turned into good creatures. One of the group members awakened 4 demonic tails at once, intending to demonstrate the true power of the Jinchuriki. The negative energy was so great that after the monster awakened, a barred-colored beam stretched all the way to the skies, warning those around them about who was waiting ahead of them. Next, we are transported to some lively city. In one of the parks, a cute girl stood by the water and was thinking about something. But she was unable to remain alone with her thoughts for too long. That same demon was rapidly approaching her. The beauty was also not so simple. She was ready to accept this battle, crushing the evil that had acquired such a terrifying form. This time we are taken to the protagonist's apartment. It looks like a standard bachelor's apartment, but even dirtier. The guy's condition was also not the best. He did not understand why the gods gave him so little luck and so many trials along the way. He was covered in leaves, bruises, and dirt. The events of the previous night remained a mystery, so the young man assumed that he was simply running through the forest in search of something. However, his scent was more important right now, as it would be more than enough to frighten most weak monsters and rank 2 cursed spirits. Our main character recently turned 30, and like all parents, his mother insisted on finding a job because she didn't like supporting her nerdy son. The main character himself was terribly lazy and did not have any special talents, so he often listened to negative words from his clients and acquaintances. True, as a real Sigma, he did not care about the opinions of others, yet he perfectly understood his position. In order to somehow drown out this flow of negativity, the main character listened to playlists for the gym at home, receiving an extreme charge of motivation for the rest of the day. A guy once watched a movie, it was quite interesting, where the main character of the story woke up every day as a new person. Earlier in adolescence, our boy faced almost the same problem, but the only difference was that instead of the body, the place of awakening was constantly changing. Several times the young man woke up at the top of the Elven Tower or on the territory of Disneyland. In such cases, it was very difficult. In addition to this unusual ability, the young man also had another but useful one. He was able to hear even a whisper at a distance of 100-150 meters. A visit to the doctor did not reveal any anomalies. The main character's characteristics were only called sleepwalking and good hearing. They were not somehow connected, according to the expert. The young man really didn't like the possibility of dying during a night walk. He already wanted to find Rick with his device for programming a nocturnal personality. The guy hurried to school. Despite his unusual abilities, the young man, like everyone else, continued to study and did not become a supervillain or anti-hero. In his opinion, the classes were quite boring, and due to the huge number of students, no one noticed their inactive work or absence from lectures. At almost every couple, the girls gossiped and tried to figure things out with a guy who was dating several girls at once. All these words, even despite the presence of headphones, poured into the main character's head like a stream. It was not possible to get rid of the power or temporarily turn it off. But despite the fact that hearing such things infuriated him, the young man had a negative attitude towards this type of guys, yet he maintained only monogamous relationships. The most stressful situation for the main character was that this terrible person about whom the girls were gossiping, in their opinion, was a certain Jo Mingyu. The young man asked to stop spreading ridiculous rumors because they don't even know who they called geek. The boy was ready to show his SSS combo from DMC. The girls did not recognize the young man. Then he introduced himself as Jo Mingyu, but they also continued to consider him a bad guy, confident that he was dating several girls at once. This irritated the main character, because where has it been seen that someone would spread rumors so brazenly, and who could even do this if the guy was quiet and calm? In addition, for the past 19 years, the guy has been a member of the Forever Alone Club, and before he could fall asleep, a message from a stranger arrived on his phone. A certain Lee Yunfei wanted to meet with the young man and gave the address where the guy needed to appear soon for a conversation. Mingyu was beside himself with anger because he considered the sender to be a scoundrel. The place named by the person who was supposedly spreading rumors about the main character was an abandoned complex. This creepy place was an excellent base for some Satanists. The guy's anger had already gone beyond the bounds because if he had previously just been a ghoul, now he's such an evil ghoul. Everything will get even worse if this is someone's stupid joke. But suddenly the boy heard some kind of rhythmic knocking coming from the very top of the building. It sounded like snapping fingers. The main character lifted his head higher and saw a cosplayer there who was trying to repeat the style of Ling Yao from Full Metal Alchemist. Brotherhood. Assuming that the stranger was up to something stupid, the guy began to think about how to help him after all. Even though this guy was an eccentric, it was impossible to leave him. Using all his skills to increase speed, the main character ran up the steps to prevent this rash act. However, the boy himself didn't seem to be planning to do anything bad. He was simply tossing a coin, trying to predict whether he would get tails or heads. It seems that this person used the Ryoden method to resolve his own conflicts without unnecessary movements, but Mingyu himself did not know about this yet. He tried to calm the stranger down, talking about how wonderful this life is, reminding the guy about his loved ones and that they would be sad. And since the person in front of him looked older, the main character began to ask if he had children, a mortgage, or perhaps a cat at home. But the eccentric didn't even know what they were asking him about. Having asked what kind of nonsense Mingyu was talking about, the guy himself was completely bewildered. He had been waiting for the main character for a long time, and they finally met. The stranger introduced himself with the name from the email. He was Lee Yunfei. However, when Mingyu spoke about his fears, the male version of Akali from the League of Legends asked why he had to jump if he was so handsome and skilled. Since this was all a big misunderstanding, the young man planned to go home and go to bed so that he could play GeoGuessr in real life the next day. However, Lee Yunfei insisted that the main character should not have left because they had not yet finished the conversation, yet the guy called Mingyu for a reason. To intrigue the interlocutor, the eccentric talked about how much he knew about the main character. He even knew what strange abilities the guy had. The main character was of little interest in talking about power, so he planned to go back home, hoping to have time to complete millennia today. When Mingyu finally realized that Lee was the person who he thought was spreading the rumors, he wanted to show him his most powerful combo. But before answering the young man's question, the guy with lightning earrings launched something with great speed towards the main character. Turning around, the boy noticed that these were real nails which, after the eccentric's throw, not only fell but pierced the concrete tiles placed on the roof. Then the stylish Zenitsu spoke about his motives. He wanted to personally see the one who has the power of Tengu, and he does not resort to such low tricks like spreading rumors. The young man himself did not know about his strength, so he tried to explain to his new acquaintance that some extremely unpleasant misunderstanding had arisen. True, this answer did not suit Lee Yunfei, so he planned to personally conduct the test and get truthful answers from Zhou Mingyu. But to his surprise, instead of a fair fight, the main character simply began to run towards the exit. It was so strange that it even immobilized the eccentric for a few seconds. The guy was sure that the person he met simply had 8th grader syndrome, and it was impossible to try to prove to someone like him the unreality of magic. The main character's bad luck reached its apogee. He did not understand why he had so wronged the deities that each time they sent him more and more bad tests. Things became exponentially more serious when Li Yunfei stuck a nail into the ground right in front of Mingyu's feet, without even descending from the roof of the building. When several more hairpins fell into the ground, the guy used some of Kugisaki Nobara's techniques, striking the young man who was inside the circle with lightning. The frailty of his opponent made Lee worry about his decision. It seems that he really made a mistake, and Zhou Ming is just an ordinary person. Disappointed that he had wasted his time so mediocrely, the eccentric wanted to at least enjoy the free games he received from the Epic Games Store. This year, there were even good projects there. But as soon as Mingyu himself lost consciousness, his inner hollow took his place, wanting to crush the enemy in the person of Li Yunfei. The demonic form of the main character indicated that he definitely could not be an ordinary person. The young man's strength increased with every minute of the battle. The aura around his body became more and more ominous, causing the eccentric to worry. Even so, he was glad to see Mingyu's full strength. After all, he turned out to be right, and the power of Tengu lurks somewhere in the depths of the main character. However, he could not understand why. Having such incredible power, the boy did not want to demonstrate it right away, but began to run away and waste time. But to the surprise of Li Yunfei himself, the protagonist, absorbed in Sukuna, did not hear his words, continuing to behave wildly, like some kind of forest animal. The brunette was worried, because he could cause serious damage to the young man's brain with his technique, so he decided to come closer and make sure that he could be heard clearly. Even touches or blows did not have any effect. Mingyu's consciousness remained clouded, and his inner demon did not show any reaction to the impact. True, such an act of generosity did not last long. As soon as the eccentric pulled the protagonist's body by the cheeks, the monster smiled, quickly grabbing his opponent by the throat. Now Li Yunfei was not so joyful. The monster tightly squeezed his neck in its paws, anticipating what a delicious tartare he would prepare from the naive eccentric. The power of Tengu was so frightening that it was a dubious initiative to consider its owner a human at all. There was little time left, so Li used one of his techniques. The nails seemed to be attracted by a magnet. They quickly rushed towards the protagonist's face, but when they reached the goal, they did not go deep, but remained on the surface of the skin. After a few seconds of bewilderment, an explosion occurred, allowing the brunette to escape the grip of death. He was already ready to be upset, because he thought that he would not watch the last season of Dr. Stone. The carelessness and strength of the enemy amazed Li Yunfei. He expected an equal fight or even planned to be stronger, but the actual meeting showed how much he was mistaken. Even though the brunette's technique was not weak, it did not leave any damage on the young man's body. He rubbed his cheek a little on his jacket like a cat and stood back up in a fighting stance. Having received such an unexpected attack, the monster's rage increased greatly, so without a doubt, using the Flying Thunder God technique, Mingyu got close to the eccentric. There was little time, but still Li was able to put a block. It saved his life. But it will be impossible to use his left hand in the near future. In addition, such a strong blow delivered from below, as if Sendu's smash, sent the brunette to the height of an abandoned building, on top of which Li was waiting for the main character. It was not the predator's plans to let go of the prey, so having prepared a little, the demon jumped into the sky with everyone to finish off his enemy. It was not only the main character who had the techniques of movement, so by using a substitution, the guy was able to dodge the blow that was supposed to be his last. His real body moved to the nail left on the ground. Now the guy could attack Mingyu, because in the air it was impossible to evade the Heavenly Marshal's techniques. Lee continued to praise himself for his decision to leave at least one of the projectiles from below, otherwise he would have already met with Jiraiya-sensei. The speed of the main character continued to increase, so it was not possible to finish him off in the air. By the time the eccentric was able to catch his breath, the monster with a fiery aura was already on the ground. Using the Sky Marshal technique, resurrected into a barely visible oblivion, Lee planned to retaliate against the enemy's previous damage. An unusual magic circle formed under the main character. The monster did not immediately find its bearings, but instinct suggested that now there would be something no less powerful than Zhong Li's ult. The eccentric did not want to use this technique from the very beginning, yet he only came here to test the strength of Tengu. But now he had no choice. In the full cover form, the guy definitely shouldn't have died, but coming out completely unharmed, even for such a strong fighter, would be an impossible task. Kieran was quickly approaching the main character, planning to inflict mixed damage on him from pyro and geo elements. Lee was probably not lying when he called this technique incredibly dangerous. Recognizing the strength of his opponent, Lee understood how close he was to being the loser in this fight. After all, Tengu himself was standing against him. But the brunette did not have long to rejoice over the victory. Soon a small van drove up to the battle site. A girl who had previously fought with the demonic form of the protagonist in the park came out of it, and she turned to the eccentric. She asked Lee to get out of her way, because Tengu was her prey and no one else. The girl's expression did not allow her to say exactly in what sense the young man belonged to her. Having asked again whether the stranger wanted the great Li Yunfei to leave, the girl, drawing her blade, gave an affirmative answer. It seems that the battle will now continue. To show the impudent woman her place, the eccentric began to bully him about what a brilliant magician he was, how long he had been cultivating, and also how many blows the demon had withstood. His performance perfectly showed why, even after more than 20 years of life, the guy had never dated a girl. Having completely given up on the loser, the stranger continued to slowly approach the monster, which was still engulfed in flames after Lee's technique. Such bad manners and rudeness greatly embarrassed the eccentric. He insisted that the girl at least play along with him, pretending to be surprised. But the tomfoolery quickly came to an end. When the beauty's blade was at the merry fellow's neck, she warned Lee a second time not to let him stand in her way. Disrespect and rudeness made the brunette very tense. Even though he spent some of his energy fighting Tengu, he had more than enough strength to deal with someone like her. However, the lady sitting behind the wheel of the car asked the magicians to calm down. After all, they were not in Shibuya now, so there was no point in fighting among themselves. The secretary insisted that the stupid children wait until she left the battlefields, let alone keep an eye on their real enemy. The brown-haired woman was an ordinary person who, even though she knew about the existence of everything fantasy, did not want to interfere in this party any more than she did now. Before leaving, Zhaoji asked a girl named Xiaoxue to call her once they solved their problems here. The logo on the van indicated that the couple belonged to the Little Sun Agency, which, like in the anime One of the Rejected Outcasts, wanted to gain the power of the main character. In Magical Society, it is this agency that carries out various assignments and missions. Their influence is so palpable that it was impossible to ignore the existence of such a force. The fact that the girl worked for Little Sun was a real problem, because if he entered into battle, he would sign his own death sentence. However, support also arrived from Li Yunfei himself, his master scolding the stupid student for deciding to go look for the Tengu without obtaining permission. The stately man ordered his Potovan to quickly return before he finally provoked Little Sun into conflict. Lee had nothing to oppose, so he said goodbye and told the girl that this time they could take Tengu. Xiaoju herself was glad, because she managed to avoid a useless battle and save strength to capture the main character in his demonic form. Despite all the eccentric's warnings, the girl simply continued to walk towards Mingyu, ignoring all the spam coming from this strange guy. The silhouette of the main character could be seen in the puffs of smoke. It seemed that Lee's attack was only able to incapacitate him for a while, but failed to inflict critical damage. His power continued to grow, as if right now the form had changed on the Vastalord, and along with this power, the monster's anger also grew in proportion. The girl was glad to meet again. Last time she failed to capture the main character, but this time she was more determined. The girl did not plan to make a mistake and let Tengu go a second time. Her techniques were not designed for defense or retention, so she asked Mingyu to be patient. Much like Rukia's Bankai, Xiao's sword ability began to gradually cover all surfaces with a thick layer of ice, creating something like an ice biome. The monster was in no hurry to attack first. It was only waiting and preparing for a counterattack, because last time the girl managed to beat up Mingyu badly. Then, before the battle, the boy was thrown into his memories. There he was still just a boy lying on a golden field, and some voice was calling him. It was Mingyu's father. He called his son Little Brat and called him into the house because he had been sleeping here for a long time. Dinner was already ready, so Dad came to call the main character to the table. He was touched by how long it took the guy to figure things out after waking up. These moments were indeed joyful. The young man remembered them in difficult moments of life in a vain attempt to prevent the anger scale from filling up to %. They lived in unusual lands. There were many plants, but chaos and destruction reigned everywhere, as if someone was practicing battle magic here. The guy asked his father for forgiveness because he did not understand how exactly he ended up in that place again. Earlier, he had fallen asleep in his bed, and when he opened his eyes, he found himself in a field. But Dad promised to find the main character, no matter where he hides. The young man asked if his father promised to do this, but the man himself began to doubt, because it was difficult to guarantee such a thing. In addition, the time will come when the main character will live separately, without the supervision of his parents and their constant help. But the young man was upset, because his father promised to always find him. Then the man said, if not him, then his friends will come to Mingyu's rescue, although among them there were many strange personalities, for example, Urahara Kisuke. But the young man was more surprised that his father had any friends at all, because his mother always called him Hiki. The man tried to convince his son, because there was not a single reason that could cause him to have no friends. True, the boy himself did not see any of them, and he doubted that they would come to his rescue if his father quarreled with them. Returning to his normal state, the guy finally heard his father's words. He asked Mingyu to become strong in order to cope without relying on anyone. Without noticing any changes, Xiao continued to attack the main character. Dodging the first attack was not difficult, but a control kick made the young man fall knocked out. He was thrown 10 meters before he stopped, crashing into the wall. The guy didn't understand who was attacking him, so he loudly asked for help. He was so young and didn't want to die. The girl was surprised at how quickly the main character came to his senses, and she wanted to try Zoro's techniques on him to add to her list of favorite techniques. Noticing his strange changes, the young man could not believe that he was turning into a monster. His nails were much longer, his ears were sharper, and the patterns near his eyes left no doubt at all. Xiao decided to make sure whether the guy really came to his senses by asking him again, because any carelessness could cost her life. Only the guy himself was sure that among the two of them, it was the girl who now seemed abnormal, because she attacked a defenseless person. No one knew the reason, but the young man actually regained control of his body on his own, and after a few moments, his body also returned to normal. Not wanting to waste time explaining now, Xiao asked to follow her. She needed to take the main character to one person. Only the boy himself began to ask a large number of questions, wondering who was standing in front of him and whether the girl was the same as that strange guy. The main character talked so much that Xiao decided to use an original method of explanation based on the use of secret techniques of martial artists. Li Yunfei, who was watching everything from the side, was amazed because the young man, absorbed by the power of Tengu, was able to return back, and the strength of the girl he did not know was above average. At that moment, the boy set a goal for himself. He wanted to definitely fight with this couple next time to show how strong he was. However, the prototype Zaraki Kenpachi was stopped by a skillful tripping from his master, who continued to chastise him for his rash actions. The only one the young man trembled before was his uncle Tien, who taught him magic and also mentored him on this path from the very beginning to the present moment. Previously, he warned his stupid student that approaching Tengu is extremely dangerous, because even if he doesn't break all your bones, others will appear who claim his power. While the guy continued to promise that he would not do this again, a stranger appeared on the top of the portal to the Nether. Only the old man was able to recognize the stranger, and he quickly realized that after this man appeared, they were now in a real mess, because they would not be able to escape. A strange-looking young man in a cool t-shirt and a strange robe offered death to everyone who so desperately sought it. This time he wanted to know why Tian Wenzhong was allowing something like this to happen to his disciple. The master tried to justify himself because he really still wanted to live. He tried to explain that a monstrous misunderstanding had occurred. But his student was outraged by this attitude because only the most worthy could address the master by name, and in front of him was some kind of no-name. Li used a technique with nails which he used to fight off the attack of the main character the first time. The old man tried to stop the young man, but it was too late. But the unknown man easily stopped the attack, as if not noticing. His white aura spoke of strength, but his face did not express any emotion at all. The eccentric, amazed by this outcome, could not believe it, because he really considered himself a talented genius who truly understood the principles of this world. At the same moment, his mentor used his Omnislash to explain to his student who exactly was in front of them and why it was impossible to attack. He also forced him to bow, addressing the as yet unknown master and begging his forgiveness. Li Yunfei himself continued to wonder who was in front of them, even if Uncle Tian showed him such respect. The man also promised to punish the boy, who did not understand what stupidity he was doing, hoping to still be at home that day. However, the stranger went to the meeting, asking Tian not to scold the guy too much. After all, he really didn't understand anything. He decided to attack the guy himself. Using his Nen abilities, this mysterious man easily put Li on the floor. The magician of incredible power was extremely disappointed, because the head of the clan had previously promised that they should not have any contact with the owner of the Tengu power. Previously, they turned a blind eye to what was happening, but now the seriousness of the offense had reached a new level, and the guy could not ignore this. Today's offense was not only meeting Miyangyi, but also awakening his demonic spirit. Approaching Old Man Tian, the mysterious man asked whether it would be fair to punish the boy who decided that everything was allowed to him. The master, very nervous, tried to take the blame on himself, because Li Yunfei allowed himself to behave this way due to lack of strictness on his part. The man was ready to accept the punishment instead of his student, because in his opinion it would be fair. God of Death. SSG Arima accepted the offer and was ready to kill Uncle Tian for the misdeed of his student. After all, someone had to bear the punishment for what he had done. However, in fact, the mysterious stranger seemed evil specifically to intimidate his opponents, but did not intend to do anything evil, and even left nails to stop Li's bleeding. Before leaving, the guy in the robe asked to convey a message to the head of the clan. Now the main character will live under the same roof with him. As soon as the mysterious man left the roof, Uncle Tian's arm began to hurt incredibly. Most likely some kind of spell was cast on him. To avoid death, the man was forced to cut off his hand, but since he is not undead like the main character of Undead Unluck, it is not possible to restore it. Li fully understood that the blame lay with him, and in tears asked for forgiveness from the master for committing such a stupidity. Meanwhile, under the cover of darkness, a mysterious stranger landed on one of the roofs. Even a short period of time was enough for him to move so far. Returning to his home, the guy slowly entered the room. It seems that despite his strength and good name, his powers were very limited at the moment. Even using multiple techniques took a toll on his body, causing him to cough loudly and lose some blood before he could recover. Even though his condition was quite serious, he hid from Xiaozhue the wounds he received long ago, which opened up again over and over again. From the sounds coming from outside, the mysterious young man realized that the girl had returned back with the main character, which means that this time their plan worked perfectly. He decided to come up with something outstanding to impress the main character and earn his favor. He already wanted to get the Catan board game and also make tea. However, unexpectedly he was struck by a new feeling. Extreme fatigue and weakness came at once, reminding the master that he had not eaten for the last few days. Having fallen to the floor, the guy was very upset, because he didn't want to appear in front of his students in this form, and besides, he still really wanted pizza. The place where the beauty took our Mingy did not look special. It was a small and dark alley where one could find a lot of garbage and cats. The young man was very surprised that such an ordinary place was a destination, but remembering the films about Harry Potter, he did not ask unnecessary questions. There were magical shelters there too. The main character was not familiar with the name of the sect, so he took Little Sun for the name of some kind of kindergarten or hobby club. Thinking about children, the young man also came to mind about his experience of playing League of Legends. Characteristic pings in the form of a question accompanied these thoughts, alarming the guy even more. Sheu Shui invited the boy inside, but before entering, the main character really wanted to get an answer to one question that was tormenting him. The young man wanted to know who the girl was, and also how exactly she was connected with the eccentric who had previously attacked him using strange techniques. Since the guy asked to answer only one question, Xiao rightly noted that the main character asked several at once, and wanted to clarify which one she should answer. Realizing how useless it was to try to talk with the beauty accompanying him, the young man decided to find out whether he would get answers if he met the one to whom she was leading him. But since this was another question, Xiao again asked which one she still needed to answer, although Mingyi was not interested in anything else, and he went inside. The courtyard looked very authentic. It seemed as if this place was taken from the cartoon Kung Fu Panda. Answers were waiting for the young man ahead. From the outside, this place looked rather mediocre, but all its beauty could only be appreciated once you were inside. The protagonist's good hearing allowed him to hear a strange sound coming from the next room. He asked his companion if she had noticed anything. A long and very unusual rumbling sound came from behind the door. Even Xiaozhu could not say exactly what was making this unpleasant and loud sound. The main character hoped to receive some more professional answer, so he was a little upset, although the girl herself did not understand why Tengu reacted this way. However, she remembered in time about the meeting with the enemy, so she decided to prepare for the worst. After all, just like in that anime, the battle could begin in 5 seconds. Taking out the book, the beauty wanted to go inside. The guy asked her to be careful, and Mingyi was ordered to move a little further. As soon as the girl entered, the two of them saw a master crawling out from around the corner, whose appearance rather resembled a zombie or some other undead. At this moment, the protagonist's heart sank into his boots. The last time something scared him so much was when he completed the second part of Outlast. But Xiao seemed not at all surprised by the meeting. In this semi-living state of the boss, she was still able to recognize him. The master's appetite was amazing, because the mountain of garbage behind him was increasing, but the guy's desire to eat tasty food did not go away. While eating, the boss spoke quite a lot, but Xiao could not understand him due to the fact that his cheeks were filled with various foods. The usefulness of the protagonist began to manifest itself constantly. Now he acted as a translator, because thanks to his incredible hearing, he could discern meaningful text in this heap of sounds. The girl did not understand why the master was starving for 2 whole days, because previously she had left him money for food. However, the master invested all the funds he had left in Genshin and wanted to get Klee out of the banner. But even after spending all his savings, he could not get a waifu. True, the problem did not go away, even though their boss ate, because the money invested in the game was their budget for the entire month. Despite its legendary status, Little Sun actually didn't have many orders, so for 6 months they no longer paid for the internet and utilities. But despite his wonderful abilities, it was impossible to understand the master's entire speech. Sometimes he spoke some kind of nonsense. Having finally eaten all the supplies and drunk a bottle of water, the guy was finally ready to start a conversation. By the appearance of the main character, he could guess how many questions he had accumulated. And in his opinion, there was no need to worry about money, because if you do everything as he says, then the situation will definitely improve, and they will be like cheese and butter. Xiao handed it to her master Mingyi. As her mentor ordered, the young man greeted him even though they had already been chatting for some time. The appearance of the main character is so inconspicuous that he didn't even need optical camouflage. He could easily outdo Desgen in stealth. Mingyi's examination led to an unexpected conclusion. His body, despite the power hidden inside, was hardly distinguishable from the body of an ordinary person. The young man was not happy about this experience, but local Satoru Gojo shared his opinion on this matter. Everything was normal except for one small problem. However, the handsome man asked not to worry too much about it, because the problem is really not that big, just some very ordinary little things. But if nothing is done, the main character will soon go to another world, and this could probably happen soon. The master's confidence and calmness relaxed Mingyi's vigilance, but when the meaning of the guy's words dawned on him, he quickly found the right emotion. It was difficult for the young man to believe this, because apart from his sleepwalking, he considered himself absolutely healthy. He even hoped to live to be 100 years old. However, there could be no mistake. Although Mingyi was not angry because of the prophecy, such a reaction was caused by the boss's character, irresponsible and arrogant. Continuing to ignore the main character, the master turned to Xiaoshui. He had a task for her that he had mentioned earlier. The girl had to catch the runaway cat of their neighbor, Miss Wang. The woman asked them to complete the task, even if it was intended for Jenin. They were already looking for the 3rd cat in a month, and Zhao was already quite tired of such boring missions. She was also not happy with the fact that her mentor seemed to have forgotten what they were actually supposed to do. But according to the guy himself, they needed something to eat. But there was no work in their specialization, so they had to do the tasks that were at hand. They had to pay almost $700 for catching the cat. Miss Wang is a fairly independent woman, so they had to do the search quickly. Although reluctantly, Xiaozhu took on this work, then the master reported in which area the animal was last seen. After saying goodbye to the girl and wishing her good luck, they could finally talk with the main character alone, although Mingyi managed to collect a lot of questions. First of all, he was interested in what these two were doing, as well as the meaning of the inscription on the sign by the door, because Little Sun really doesn't sound very pretentious. Then the master explained that this was only part of their disguise, although even this the situation did not become clearer. Still, Deigning to give a more complete answer, the guy began his story with the existence of secret people who perform equally secret affairs, and their job is to help in this process. Saving cats, delivering food, washing dishes for money, all this is work that they take in their free time, but the main character was also worried about what he was brought here for. Then the master decided to explain how these strange orders and the young man were connected. They had previously received the task of protecting Mingy at all costs. This order was made a very long time ago by the father of the main character and also a good friend of the master. Even though they knew Mingy's parent, any mention of that man made the mentor very angry. He couldn't stand hearing the man's name. All because of one old story, when they were hanging out at Meliodas' pub and had such a good time that the master fell asleep in the process. Later he was woken up by the waitress and asked to pay the bill. There seems to be nothing special about this, but that time he drank apple juice and ate various snacks with the protagonist's father, but he simply disappeared, placing the entire debt on the mentor's shoulders. The boss couldn't get that much money at that moment, so he had a very difficult time getting out of that situation. This story about the achievements of a young man in the culinary business lasted another 30 minutes. The main character was already ready to die, rather than listen to the continuation. Previously, the master learned to fry, boil, and steam food so well that he was called the god of cooking, and all the pretenders ran away with their tail between their legs. But that was not all. The young man begged his new acquaintance to stop telling stories from his life, but the boss still did not tell even half of what happened to him that time. The master didn't particularly like to talk about his name, but since the main character was not a stranger to him, he decided to introduce himself. Many knew him by the nickname The Strongest, but those few who were honored to hear his real name called the guy Seojun Kim. The young man heard different stories from his father, so the guy was surprised, deciding to clarify whether it was the same Seojun in front of him. But the master immediately began to make excuses, saying that he had never tortured cats. But the main character did not plan to talk about this. He told his uncle about the words of his father, and also that someone had to come to the rescue in difficult times. After thinking a little, Seojun said that what the guy considers a disease is actually the Tengu power stored in him. Previously, the main character heard these same words from Lee Yunfei, but he did not even understand what they meant because he was not a magician. The master asked not to draw a parallel with the constellation of the dog, which is usually called Tengu. In their society, this word has a slightly different meaning. Tengu is the embodiment of disasters and destruction. According to legend, it was this monster that at one point devoured the moon, even if these are just rumors. The legend of the lunar eclipse concerns their Tengu only partially. At its core, the guy is a person in whom the legendary Pokemon is sealed. According to legends, the origin of a special type of force occurred many years ago on Mount Kunlun. The limits, as well as the consequences of using the force, are unknown. But one thing was noticeable to any magician: the incredible power was gradually destroying its vessel, causing a person to lose his mind and, as a result, control over himself. In other words, if Mingy allows this force to develop within and cannot subdue it, then the loss of control will no longer be temporary. The youth's consciousness will go into darkness forever. It was very difficult to do something, because earlier the protagonist's father was trying to find a way to protect his son from the effects of destructive forces. Then the young man did not understand why he listened to all this nonsense about slavery from the cafe, and Seojun becoming a professional chef, if in the end it was impossible to help the young man. However, the uncle decided to give Mingy a break. Even though it was completely impossible to solve the problem, he was still able to do something for the guy. The only option that will allow the guy to live longer, learn to control the power inside him, and with this the boss can provide support. A method that would allow the guy to cope with this task had already been found, but the young man, like Rin Akamura, knew nothing about the other side of the world, so the training would be long. In recent years, Seojun has only been busy collecting information about Tengu and how it can be effectively suppressed while maintaining control over the body. There was still a way to make this monster your ally, but any opportunity, according to the uncle, is fraught with risk. To bring his new student up to speed, Seojun gave him special notes in which this method was described in detail. Erlin Shen's works are a real artifact that contains many secrets, but the signature primary school notebook was a little alarming to the protagonist. The guy read the story of how Xiaojie wanted to become a thief as a child, like the cat thief Nami. But Seojun asked to turn the page, saying that he was keeping that treasure for himself. The drawings and texts that the master considered a panacea were so poor that the main character could hardly read it. But the boss only made excuses because everyone could condemn the artist. If it weren't for Dad's request for such disrespect for the student's children's notebook, the master would have nailed him in Mingi's place, turning him into a chop. The main character was ready to listen to his mentor. He still relied on the master to understand the texts. After all, he was the one who wrote them. However, this was an even more difficult quest than catching a cat. It seemed that the man had a talent not only for cooking, but also for medicine. He could not decipher his handwriting. Xiong promised to quickly decipher everything, because after all, he made these recordings himself, which means it should be possible to do this. Xiao's notebook was chosen as a cache for secrets for a reason. Many are hunting for the secret of subduing the power of Tengu, and if it falls into the wrong hands, there will be trouble. To prevent the guy from causing problems because of this curse, he will temporarily live at the Little Sun Agency. The young man himself was only happy because he would no longer have to pay rent. But Mingi's hopes were not destined to come true, since the mentor demanded from him $250 per month in cash or by transfer to a card. To make the move more comfortable, the right person has long gone to pick up the main character's things, and soon everything will have to be delivered to his new room. Only a couple of minutes passed, and the courier with all the boy's belongings had already arrived. It was the same van in which Xiao Shui reached the place where Tengu was released. The secretary was not very happy to do such work, however. As agreed, she delivered all of Mingya's collected things almost intact. Now it was impossible to turn away and tell the mentor to fuck off, because there was no money to call a truck back to his apartment. The woman was surprised because she thought that the main character's condition would be much more deplorable, but at least put him to work now. But apparently it was already a tradition to demand money from a newcomer, so the secretary wanted to receive payment for her services. Xiao decided to intervene in this extortion scheme because according to the data she had, such transportation cost $10 less. The task of catching cats went well. It seems that the girl is like a magnet for all furry ones. She returned home immediately with her personal army. Sister Zhao asked the girl to keep it a secret, and with the extra markup, they would buy her dakimakura or new things. The guy regretted that he had agreed to go with the beauty earlier. It seemed that it was the stupidest and at the same time serious mistake in his life. Xiong was glad to see the student. From her appearance, one could assume that the outcome of the task was more than positive. It wasn't possible to figure out which cat was needed, so the girl brought back all those she had caught, and even Pug from Forced to Become the Strongest in the World was among them. The boss couldn't figure it out either, so he suggested leaving everyone for now, and tomorrow Miss Wang could pick up the one she needed. The girl planned to go on vacation, so the master thanked her for her work, and in the meantime he planned to scam Zhou Mingyi out of some more money. However, the main character understood that his father's friend wanted to make money and refused help, promising to soon finish it on his own. Even after moving, the young man's room was still a dump, but the hard day still took its toll, so even in such conditions, he went to bed. This time he really found himself involved in some strange things, but it looks like now he really doesn't have to worry about his life. Ram and Rem on the pillow encouraged Mingyi. He was confident that in time he would deal with all the problems haunting him. Xiaozhe was sleeping behind the wall. Since it was she who brought the cats, they should also spend this night in her company. The uncle could not miss such a chance. However, only Xiong considered the state of affairs cute, because the constant meowing and grinding did not allow the main character to sleep properly. He even started Googling some unusual cat dishes. In the kitchen, during the conversation, he saw bay leaves and spices, so only vegetables were needed. The next morning was not good for Mingyi, because he was unable to sleep well due to his noisy neighbors. A little later, Miss Wang came to visit. For such a rejected work of the girl, who, according to the master, was looking for the cat all night, they received a small bonus. Xiong was a real miser, and his student knew this very well, so she did not interfere in any of his adventures. When the master found out about the rich fortune of their neighbor, he quickly figured out how to replenish the treasury of their agency, although raiding other sects, like in Clash of Clans, would be more profitable. The noisy conversations made Mingyi quickly leave his room. His previous neighbors were no less loud, so he was used to this. Since the main character was new to their agency, Xiong assigned Xiaozhe to him so that she could explain all the intricacies and show him every corner during the day. The bag behind the young man's back seemed suspicious to the master, so he immediately began asking why the boy needed it. But the guy only said that despite what happened yesterday, it was his responsibility to continue going to university, because otherwise he would be expelled, and he also had to take exams. However, this couple not only did not have a normal job, but also did not have a thorough education. It was difficult for them to understand what Mingyi was talking about. It was dangerous to be somewhere other than their headquarters, so Xiao would go with the boy as a bodyguard, as was originally intended. Only the guy couldn't pay for the services of his personal guard, which he immediately reported to his boss, having already understood exactly how he conducts his business. The main character studied at Decent University of Science and Technology and arrived at the southern entrance in Little Sun's personal van. After thanking Sister Zhao for the ride, he was already planning to leave, but the secretary insisted that the taxi cost him 24 bucks. Such a robbery in broad daylight struck the boy. Soon, like Kazuma, he would be forced to work 3 jobs just to avoid sleeping in the stable. However, the woman was just joking, and Xiaozu also came out after the main character with a hidden sword behind her back. Mingyi's behavior attracted a lot of other people's attention, so the girl advised him to get up quickly, otherwise they would not avoid problems. The young man's reputation was, to put it mildly, terrible, so he decided to make fun of the girl, saying that yesterday she was looking for a real scoundrel. As it turned out later, it was the brunette who became the reason for the rumors that circulated around Mingyi's personality at the university, because she planned to quickly get to know the guy in this way. It was necessary to resort to such tricks due to the size of the educational institution, but even this fact did not save Xiao from the wrath of the protagonist. The usually cold girl had excellent acting skills. When necessary, she could even play a trickster cooler than Deadpool. It seems that Xiao was proud of the work she had done, because the plan seemed really effective. The point was that the guy would find her himself, and then she would take him. The boy asked if this situation could have been resolved somehow differently, but this plan was suggested to the beauty by others, so if he is looking for someone to blame, he should pay attention to the master. Xiao noticed something unusual. It was someone's evil attention, as if someone was planning to strike right now. She quickly knocked Mingyi down to save her from an unexpected attack from an unknown person. Her intuition once again did not fail the girl. The guys were attacked by several white birds. Their speed was extremely high, and in a normal situation, this would be enough to knock out the main character. Angry Birds was not such an interesting game if you yourself became the target for defeat, so the young man just continued to watch what was happening. Even though the birds were already approaching, Xiao continued to stand, not even trying to do anything to save their lives. A few moments later, she took the blade out of its sheath and asked the young man to remain vigilant, because most likely they might have more than one enemy. Dealing with subordinate animals was not a big problem for a master like Xiao Jue. She instantly defeated several dozen at once. For the first time, the main character noticed that his bodyguard was a real beauty, and she in turn was pleased with the work done. It was very difficult to control such a number of pigeons, and besides, their beaks were coated with non-lethal poison, which means that their opponent was quite skillful. It was too dangerous to stay at the university any longer, so Xiao suggested going back and telling their master about everything. But there was no talk of any return, because the boy still had not attended classes, and also had not gone to Walmart to buy some food. Then the girl asked directly whether the lessons or the life of the main character were more important. Without any doubt, Mingyi sent these useless lessons to the ass. Xiao loved animals very much, so she beat all the pigeons with the back of her sword, so as not to hurt anyone but only to temporarily disable them. The attacker turned out to be a cute girl with ponytails. She was unhappy that someone was protecting the main character, and not some weakling, but a real master. The legal girl wanted to know why there are always so many girls around the boy. Almost every day someone is always nearby. Xingqiang screamed so loudly what she would do next time she met the main character, so she did not notice how the teacher approached her from behind. This beta version of Freiren was not sure of the reliability of her answer, because she hoped to quickly carry out everything and then run away. However, she had a trick that worked. She used all her stock of cuteness to charm the teacher, because such a good girl should not be given punishment. There was no one in the second office, so the teacher wanted to explain to her student the topic about which she came to the office. In order not to be left out, Xingjiang continued to play the role of a kind girl without any shortcomings. It only took 3 hours of lectures for the girl to finally be able to leave the second room. At the end, she even enjoyed listening to about fruit flies. Xingqiang, or whatever her real name is, Sun Qi was one of the few who got into the group for the especially gifted. Despite her young age, she was in her second year. As soon as the little girl left the building, it dawned on her that she had actually come to do another job, and not study and write a paper on biology. The bird sitting on its head was called Smokey, and to cheer up its owner, she wished her luck and said that it was not too late to restore justice. Everyone around her paid a lot of attention to the girl, even though she was considered a real cutie. From the outside, she looked like a real freak. Suddenly, the girl's phone began to vibrate, and the lady called her to find out how the assigned mission was going. Next, we are transferred to a bar, where a respectable man and some guy are talking to someone unknown on the phone about some lawyer's account. If it had been Project K, we would now be at the Reds base. The old man was wondering who got into trouble this time. Then the gray-haired boy said that it was some rich man who, for some reason, pretended to be a good lawyer. They believe the man did this to evade taxes, falsify evidence, and intimidate witnesses. The guy worked constantly, so the bartender offered him 82-year-old milk. The guy definitely had money. He was entrusted with so much work that he was soon to become the mistress's personal agent. As night fell, one of the hotels in the city was very noisy. One of the rooms turned into a real garbage dump after the battle. The girls who witnessed what happened were very frightened and could not even move, let alone run away or call for help. It was the work of Sun Chiki. She dealt with the scoundrel that the gray-haired guy had spoken about earlier. He promised to surrender to the police tomorrow, but she wanted to get what she wanted now. Satisfied with the work done, the baby gave in to her dreams. She wanted to hold Guts' sword in her hands, but her strength was not enough for this, so a wand came up as a replacement. It took more than 10 years to create a good sword. According to her, its ice blade had never been used in battle. This time she wanted to take out this sheathed blade and take revenge for any insulted and humiliated person, if it was not in his own power to do so. With one blow, Sunchiki easily destroyed a small branch, but the calculation was inaccurate and it fell right on her head. Sitting under that same tree, the little girl was thinking about why there are so many bad people in this world and wanted to get an answer from her bird partner. People could not concentrate on the good, preferring to do stupid things, break the law, and succumb to mortal sins. The more the girl thought about this, the more clearly she saw the image of her father. Even though the girl's mother was a real beauty, her father still found himself as many as 13 mistresses. It was not easy to find out, but she still managed to do it. And then Sun Chiki found out that her mother was no better, and also formed a football team on the side. The only pity is that none of them took part in Blue Lock. The little girl's indignation was crushed by the rumbling of her stomach. It looked like she hadn't eaten anything for a long time. She had nowhere to return because she ran away from home 5 days ago, but no one even tried to find her. The girl was sure that her parents were busy with something more interesting. She considered her relatives to be even more trash than the main character, but she was surprised that someone still came to his defense. However, Sunchiki did not plan to give up just because a strong opponent stood in the way. She persistently decided to take revenge on Jo Mingi for everything. It was not within her power to beat her parents, but taking it out on the boy was actually not such a difficult task. And since the main character, in her opinion, is a villain, they are doing a good deed just like the heroes of light. Birdie was also glad to take part in this, but tired from a hard day, Dimok fell asleep almost immediately after that. But Sunchiki tried to wake up her nakama because it was not yet time to sleep. In order to get some food, the little girl finally decided to go to the bar where the lawyer's case was discussed. He was even more secretive than Anteku. The first floor was an ordinary establishment. There was one man sitting at the bar who was surprised that even school children were allowed here. However, the barmaid asked him to speak more quietly because she would be angry if she found out. After all, she may be a child, but still a student. Having walked a little further, the little girl went down to the ground floor. This was the place where other magicians of their organization gathered. The young people offered to keep her company. However, she not only didn't want to drink with her brothers, but she couldn't, so she simply ignored the request. Some of the guys started joking about this topic because her bad mood could be justified. Perhaps she realized that she was inferior to real students or her boyfriend left her. But when she approached the bar, Sunchiki wanted to ask all her colleagues for one favor. While no one understood anything, the bartender asked Chiki what made her so angry, but the upset girl only remained silent, poutingly. The request that the girl was talking about was to teach a lesson to a guy who, in her opinion, was dating several girls at once. She planned to do it herself, but a skilled magician came to his defense. She showed her colleagues the photo and asked them to detain her. The main character was a weakling, so there was not much time to win. The little girl was ready to pay any amount for the service provided. The largest of the guys accepted the offer, asking to leave this master to him because he was a real specialist in defense. One of the guys recognized the girl in the photo. In narrow circles, they called her sick in the head. No one wanted to get involved with such a strange magician. She, as well as her boss Sin, were considered untouchable, because those who challenged them ended up losing several times more than they received. The little girl heard the same story about the boss from Little Sun, in which he tortured cats. It seems that there are different rumors about all the members of that sect. True, her colleagues corrected Tsitsi. He did not mock the cats, but he could well consider those who attacked his allies to be animals, and in this case he would not restrain himself. But not wanting to give up her plan, the little girl only doubled the amount of the reward, hoping that one of her friends would agree. After thinking again, everyone decided to refuse after all. No money is worth getting involved with someone from Little Sun. Leaving the bar, the girl was extremely disappointed that her friends turned out to be a bunch of scared weaklings who couldn't go after someone who was under Sin's protection. One elderly man decided to provide the service. He asked whether the little girl would be against such help, but he asked to fulfill his promise regarding the money. The old master was so skilled that he was able to approach Chiki from behind even more secretly than Corvo did with the alien's mark. She could not feel anything. The next morning began a little calmer for the main character. This time he did not need to rush to study, because he would most likely be expelled after yesterday. Leaving the room, he scared all the abandoned cats who, due to Xiao's secret power, did not want to go somewhere away. The boy went to the bathroom to brush his teeth. The doors were open, so he thought that there was no one inside. The cleaning process was interrupted by a strange noise that the guy heard behind the next door. The sign was not upside down, so in theory, there should have been no one there. However, Xiaojue was inside. The meeting was so unexpected that the guy spat out all the water and toothpaste that was in his mouth. Sister Zhao woke up later than everyone else, but hurried to wash up, because soon she had to start doing work. In the bathroom, she noticed the main character, who was obediently kneeling, and under his feet there was a washing board. It was not easy to understand what was happening here, so the boy explained that it was something like his punishment for making a mistake. When the girl came out next and greeted the secretary, she had quite a few questions about the mass that looked like whipped cream. Having misinterpreted the situation, Sister Zhao was ready to turn into an Akuma and drag the main character along with her to hell. The young man could not convince the secretary of his innocence, so he continued to miss critical blows over and over again, and the woman, like Aphelios, changed one weapon after another. After their morning routine, they were sent to the market to get food. The main dish chosen was fried dough, which could often be found in local eateries. The guy once again asked Xiaozhu for forgiveness for the morning incident, but she didn't seem to care much about it after all. Part of the blame was on her. They bought well. The young man even doubted that they would be able to eat so much fast food, yet they bought it with almost all the money. Then the beauty reminded the guy about the habit of their boss, who, despite the fact that he usually eats 8 to 9 calories for an ordinary person, still does not gain weight. Remembering how their first meeting went, it was not difficult to believe in such abilities, yet Xiang was not human in certain aspects. Unexpectedly, Xiao handed her packages to the main character. A serious battle was planned, and the brunette knew about it. Ahead of them awaited the most serious enemy, which even the fans of the Dark Souls series of games united in a huge army could not. The guy thought it was cute to take such a serious attitude towards the small dog, and suggested that it was his job to protect the beauties from the attacks of evil animals. But as soon as he turned back, everything fell into place. They were surrounded by a huge number of dogs, and on top there were several dozen cats. This did not look like a normal situation. Having stopped being brave, the main character asked his senpai to sort everything out. After all, in terms of strength, he could hardly compete with her now. The viciousness of the animals indicated that someone was controlling them, just like those birds that had earlier attacked Mingi at the university. Xiaozhu asked her friend not to move too far away from her, otherwise she would not be able to protect the guy from the attack. True, the goal of almost all the dogs was the main character, so keeping this promise was quite difficult. All they had at hand was fried bread. But the girl didn't need anything more. She masterfully managed to defeat several animals with a precise blow with a hard bun, while the young man demonstrated how butterfly is a good carry item. However, it was not possible to avoid all attacks, so the young man was brutally bitten by cats from all sides. Only from that moment on, the serious opponents were not the enchanted animals, but the old woman who was slowly approaching them. Realizing how dangerous the enemy facing them was, Xiao sent the protagonist ahead while she planned to deal with their enemy. Protecting his food, Mingi made his way to the exit of the alley. Their base was not that far away, so getting to it was the best solution. The old man asked for forgiveness for what he was planning to do to the young lady. After all, she had not fought for a long time, and was not sure that she could contain her strength. Xiao's position was extremely disadvantageous, because she did not have a cursed sword at her hand like Akame, so she could not fight with all her strength. A huge orange bull was rapidly attacking the girl. Although this attack could hardly be called ideal, repelling it now was quite problematic. Using the power of ice, the girl froze the loaf and the air around her, planning to do the same with the butter bowl. But after taking a closer look, the Ice Master noticed that a simple blow would be enough for her opponent to crumble. There was simply no point in spending more energy. She decided to immediately clarify who was in front of her, and whether the old woman really planned to harm Zhou Mingyu. True, the old man did not plan to answer the little arrogant girl. Nevertheless, first of all, in her opinion, children needed to be taught respect for elders. Like Grandma Chio, the mage skillfully controlled the pieces of his monsters, using threads of spiritual energy to provide a reliable level of communication. As soon as Xiao smashed one bull, several more appeared from its remains, which continued to attack the young lady from all sides. Controlling such a large number of fragments at a time was very difficult. The girl did not know about such a technique, so she just had to figure out how to counter it. The woman herself, in her old age, seemed glad to remember those days when she was considered a truly powerful magician. In just a few moments, the number of familiars attacking the beauty increased several times. About 7 bulls were running around her. But even so, dealing with them was not particularly difficult. 1-2 blows with a baguette were enough to destroy each one. The Frenchman's fighting style turned out to be extremely effective. It seems that in the future, the girl should take a closer look at the idea of using another blade in battle. Despite the tangible advantage in physical strength, Xiao could not get through to the caster, and meanwhile the grandmother called Sun Chiki and told about her success. The amount to obtain such an ally turned out to be extremely high, so the little girl would not pay if the work was not completed. This elderly man always wanted to take advantage of his granddaughter whenever possible, but the girl did not consider herself a relative of this man and was very sulky about this. Plucking up courage, the girl finally decided to take revenge on the boy. This time it cost her especially dearly, but it was too late to regret. The dogs that she had previously tamed successfully completed their task, driving the main character straight to her. He was very worried that they wanted to eat him. Noticing a girl ahead, the guy tried to warn her, but after all, a pack of mad dogs was chasing him. But in turn, Tsitsi only sent her pet bird Dimka in his direction, intending to cut off all his escape routes. The guy was so focused on dodging the animals that he forgot to look around and ended up flying into a stone wall. Turning to Zhou Mingyu, the girl talked about how it would be easy for her to defeat him right now, because he was surrounded by her Falmirs. She began to scold him as the true enemy of any woman. The main character himself hardly understood what was happening around him, but he categorically disagreed. The guy tried to explain himself, calling everything that happened one big misunderstanding, but Tsitsi herself considered only the boy to be a misunderstanding. The girl shared the story that she heard from other university students. The guy was quite popular. He was called one of the worst people in the educational institution. Not wanting to listen to excuses, the little girl sent all the dogs and cats into battle, intending to teach the young man a lesson, because every sinner should be chained in hell. He didn't want to lose or get seriously injured so much that the main character accidentally activated the Tengu cover, scattering all the animals that attacked him. The red energy emanating from his body was extremely mysterious and intense, and any magician nearby could sense it. The pressure of spiritual power was much higher than that of a Shinigami of the captain level. Chiki began to tremble as soon as she came into contact with this unbridled power for just a second. The guy was extremely angry, because no one knows what he had to go through because of this stupid rumor that Xiao Jue spread. Mingi didn't plan to wait for anything, because if the little girl standing in front of him was his enemy, then he had to crush her after all. He was not the first to attack. Once Chiki faced a serious response, she was no longer able to continue the battle, and the main character seemed to be able to hit another girl and become a crush for her. Gradually, maintaining control over his own powers became more and more difficult. Then Xiao arrived in time, reminding the guy of who he really is. To make the argument seem even more effective, the beauty additionally sent her friend flying to the nearest wall, greatly perplexing Chiki. It seems that a good beating really brought Mingi to her senses. The brunette said that the main character practically lost consciousness, and she had to do this. She also scolded the guy, because he allowed Tengu to go free and almost caused the death of a little girl due to his carelessness. The little girl hoped to escape quietly, but Xiao's keen eye did not allow her to take a step. She had many questions, and also a fine for the damage caused. Chiki tried to pretend that she was just a passerby, but her acting was not that amazing, so no one believed these words. In addition, the main character intervened and said that it was this little one who controlled all the cats and dogs that had attacked them earlier. The little girl tried to use her technique, which, when Naruto transformed, made everyone smile and forget about what had happened. However, such tricks did not work on someone like Xiao Jue. She warned that if the little girl did something like that again, she would end up no weaker than the main character. Realizing that there was no chance of escaping punishment, unable to resist the power of her beautiful sister, Chiki began to ask to forget about her attack and just let her go home. When this did not work, the girl began to tell about the atrocities of the protagonist to his protector, in the hope that she would turn away from him. While Chiki presented herself as the guardian of justice, Xiao was surprised that they were not attacked because of the desire to gain the power of the Tengu. But the little girl didn't even understand what her sister was talking about. It all turned out to be so boring. Even Xiao was upset because of such an ending. Then the girls began to discuss how terrible the main character was, but his girlfriend decided to hammer the last nail into the young man's coffin, saying that he had never dated anyone. Everyone around called Joe Mingi a real scumbag. In order to somehow whitewash his reputation, Xiao decided to conduct an experiment, using her attractiveness to the maximum. She invited the main character to visit her room this evening, allowing Chiki to observe the boy's reaction to such a proposal. But as one would expect from a boy, he was not like everyone else and did not want their relationship to develop so quickly. Since the harmlessness of the protagonist was officially proven, soon Chiki no longer planned to attack Mingyu, since all the rumors about him were nothing more than lies. The boy's feelings were truly hurt, but the girls were glad that there was no real wolf hiding in sheep's clothing. Trying to hold back her laughter, the little girl even asked for forgiveness, realizing how wrong she was in her judgment regarding the main character. Someone like him is incapable of simply approaching a girl, let alone doing something wrong or forbidden. Having solved this problem, Sun Chiki planned to continue going about her business. She thanked the guys for cheering her up so much. Before leaving, the girl said goodbye and was sure that they would soon meet again. However, after this situation, it will be incredibly awkward to be around the baby, because they now know Mingi's worst secret. The main character could not believe that they really released those who attacked them in the middle of an ordinary sunny day. While the young man was indignant, Xiao decided to check the identity of the girl who attacked them to understand whether they needed to take any action. They turned out to have a lot of data on this baby. According to the first assessment, she did not pose any threat, but the Ice Queen suggested that she could pursue other goals. It was no longer possible to find out whether this was true now, so the girl sent Mingi back for the bags of chopsticks that he had thrown before the battle. Running away from that place, Chiki was very out of breath. She was very lucky, because Xiao was in a good mood. Otherwise, she would hardly have been able to leave unscathed. Looks like what the guys from the bar really said was not a lie. This girl is definitely more dangerous than some one-eyed owl. The nickname of the Ice Swordswoman largely spoke for itself, because she almost always walked with a dead look, and when showing emotion, her face practically did not move. Now, as her target, the Warrior of Light decided to choose the one who spread these evil rumors about the main character, because he turned out to be a good guy. A familiar voice was heard from the end of the street. The old man slowly approached the girl, interested in how the mission ended. However, it was also difficult to expect respect from Chiki. She was surprised at how quickly her partner was defeated. Then the old master said, Xiao turned out to be an order of magnitude stronger than originally expected. It was impossible to fight against such an opponent in a residential area. The pensioner was interested in whether the girl ultimately saved the main character, or whether Chiki was still able to teach the bad man a lesson and show him that you have to pay for everything. Having learned that Xiao had no influence on the outcome of the duel, the old master wondered whether he would be paid for the service rendered. Nevertheless, it was possible to detain the general's daughter Esdeath for some time, despite her ice. The girl asked how much she was obliged to pay for the help provided. After all, she was a man of her word and could not refuse. Then the old man said that more than anything in the world he didn't like money, because it had a bad influence on people and became the cause of many conflicts. Hearing this answer, Chiki asked what the girl's partner wanted, but having prepared for the battle, the old man only said that it would depend on the granddaughter herself. Before the little girl had time to react, a powerful technique had already been launched in her direction. The one whom she considered her ally, in fact, turned out to be the true enemy. Returning home, the guys were finally able to have breakfast, although they had to spend some time finding the fried dough thrown before the battle. The master didn't really like the quality of the food, but the main character didn't let Xiao talk about what happened, handing her a drink and telling the mentor that there was nothing else besides these chopsticks. The beauty said that the goal of the person who attacked Mingyi was not Tengu, but a personal motive, so in her opinion, there was definitely no need to worry. Wanting to make money even on this, the master offered to pay generously for medical treatment, as well as moral damage. He asked the students how much they would like to receive. Xiao didn't like deceiving people very much, so she just continued to remain silent. Mingyi asked Xiang to forget about what happened, allowing the little girl to go her own way. The master was dissatisfied with his student because, unlike the main character, her uncle had been training her for many years, but she still missed such opportunities to earn money. He insisted that when you are poor, you need to grab every opportunity and earn as much as possible, regardless of moral or any other principles. The main character was amazed at how miserly their mentor was. He should have organized his own criminal network and not become a specialist in spiritual craftsmanship. However, according to Xiang himself, one does not interfere with the other, so he estimated the damage caused to the main character at about $250,000. Only a few injuries were recorded, minor scratches on the skin, as well as disturbances in the functioning of internal organs due to the fear experienced. Xiaoku sent her mentor the information she received about Chiki so that he would handle their finances himself and not force him to take sin on his soul. Anticipating a large sum, Xiong was already planning to order pizza, shawarma, several burgers, and of course, donate to open cases in CSGO 2. Mingi received a message on his phone and rushed to check it because he was worried about how the instructors at the university would react. All the experiences turned out to be real. The main character found himself among the hanging students. If there is a shortage of places in this specialty, they will no doubt be expelled. Not wanting to be the loser who would be kicked out of the university, the young man hurried to get ready, because if he hurried, he would definitely have time to show up for classes. The young man tensed his legs and was ready to run to the very end if it would help save his career. Then he noticed Xiao riding a moped next to him. She didn't seem to care at all about the situation Mingyi found himself in. He asked his friend to give him a lift to the university. The girl was not too happy, but it was also impossible to leave the young man alone. He could be attacked again. The guy gave Xiao several compliments. He also thanked her for her help and protection. If not for her, he would have faced a lot of victories. Before the guys set off, the same bird that usually sat on Tsitsi's head appeared in front of them. The main character quickly took a defensive stance and immediately said that letting the little one go was the wrong decision. But the beautiful bird just continued to circle around Mingyi without even trying to inflict any damage on him. The young man's friend noted that the guy's face looks like a bird's, so he can probably tell them apart, but she herself sees the difference only in the cats. Then the main character told a story about how this parrot had previously mocked him. Now his plans were to treat the master to a shish kebab made from fresh meat. The bird tried to explain something to Xiao and her friend. The girl hoped that Mingyi could translate, but unfortunately the boy did not know the bird language. It was extremely difficult to understand the meaning of all the movements of the bird, but the creature's acting still helped to understand something. Most likely someone had previously attacked Chiki, so the bird flew to someone who was nearby and could try to help. Meanwhile, the baby woke up in an unfamiliar place lying on the bed, and everything around was covered with a strange, oily clay. The walls and ceiling looked like they were in impel down right now, and Magellan decided to get rid of their cell completely. The girl's hands were also firmly secured by an unknown substance. Despite its appearance, it was quite strong. Opposite sat the same old master who had previously offered his help in attacking the main character. He was surprised that Velchiki woke up earlier than planned. The girl could not understand what was happening and where exactly she was. The old master, who was right in front of her, did not plan to answer questions. The old man only said how difficult it was for him to understand his granddaughter's desire to leave the house as quickly as possible after such a touching reunion. Sticky like fused glass, the substance created by the master gradually enveloped the girl's work, starting with her hands and ending with her chest and neck. Soon the force with which the threads kept the girl motionless became much higher, almost completely enveloping Chiki. The orange substance continued to move. The baby tried to resist, but the technique used almost completely limited her, leaving only the opportunity to breathe and watch what was happening. The master planned to take Chiki to the place where her parents and grandmother are right now, but the girl was sure that she had nothing to do with this psycho. Then the elderly man pointed to the table. As he said, all the close little ones were here, covered with a layer of caramel. They were unable to resist. Even though Chiki loved going through various horror games like Poppy Playtime, she was not ready to face something like that in real life. It took quite a long time to collect the collection. The man tried to find his family for several years, gradually meeting the right people. A few months ago, an old lady was dancing in the square when a man noticed her, and she has been here ever since. The elderly master met his son at the gate of the construction site. It was a little more difficult with him because he turned out to be strong. And now the time has come for the granddaughter to add to their family idyll. The man needed just a little bit to be happy, and his collection will finally be ready. The man asked the little girl not to try to use magical power, otherwise the resulting statue might not be of very good quality. He scolded Chiki for being away from home for so long, but assured that now they would all support each other and live like a real family. Before the girl completely turned into caramel, she noticed her Smokey in the window, which meant that he had finally managed to bring help. But the old man only laughed at his granddaughter's hopes for salvation, yet they are in a remote place where no one has lived for many years. Even though there really was no one nearby, the boy and his girlfriend rushed to the rescue, trusting the bird. The first step was to cover the victim with a layer of caramel, then let it harden so that the body would remain intact for a long time. But before the old master could do anything irreversible, Xiao's technique cut the room into many pieces. Looking around, the girl realized that the situation was indeed serious. In front of them was a dangerous maniac who, like Jack the Ripper, had been hiding from the police for many years. One serious blow was enough to throw the villain out of the room, but even so, serious damage could not be caused. One caramel bull was already heading towards Xiao, but this time she did not plan to restrain her strength, and besides, she had her sword with her. Already knowing how the old man's technique worked, the girl froze the fragments of the broken animal so that the elderly master could not continue to combine them. The man himself was not very pleased with what an unpleasant opponent he encountered, because Xiao Zhui could literally reduce his technique to 0. The old man could modify the called caramel at will. This gave great versatility in use. But letting her enemy rest was not the girl's plan, so with quick blows she chopped up his defenses like crab sticks on a New Year's salad. Even though the man's strength was really high, he was not a worthy opponent for Xiao. This time he would not be able to escape, because she was not holding a stick made of bread in her hands. During the battle, she moved far enough from home, so after completing the battle, she called the main character on the phone to find out the state of affairs. The young man tried to free Chi-Ki from this elastic caramel, but it was very difficult to do. The girl herself did not understand why Mingyi simply did not use magic for this. At this point, such a loud quarrel began that Xiao even had to take the phone away from his ear so as not to become deaf from the screams of the boy and his new friend. The girl planned to leave and help the main character, because getting rid of this substance was really not easy. But unwilling to give up, the old man used several mysterious pills before his opponent left the arena. As soon as this happened, the old man's aura became incredibly dark and ominous, as if he himself was a vessel for the Tengu. It's a pity that his hair didn't become as long as Gon's during the battle with P2, but his eyes became red. The opponent's unexpected power-up did not surprise Xiao much, but she no longer planned to give a chance for survival, planning to make the next blow the last. The man's body became much more plastic, and the energy that previously seemed calm began to rage and diverge in all directions, forming something similar to a barrier. The transformation became final only after some time. The human appearance disappeared without a trace. Instead of it, the once lethargic old man looked like a newborn demon. Even such significant changes could not make the girl doubt. She instantly moved to her opponent, intending to take his life. Despite the significant boost, one hit was more than enough to deal a critical hit and send the monster flying. Having reported the problem to her partner, Xiao promised to call again after she wins another victory here. Even though the blow was quite serious, it did not stop the old man. He intended to teach uneducated youths how they should behave with their elders. The demon's power was truly frightening. He could easily destroy everything within a few meters simply by hitting the ground with his club. The wound on her stomach had healed, and the spiritual energy only continued to flow. It seemed that even Xiao Zhui would have to sweat before she could crush the enemy. The old man felt that now the form he was in was the most perfect in his entire life. He was confident that he would definitely not lose. The man told me how impatiently he was looking forward to his reunion with his family, and would not allow the boys to take his dear granddaughter away from him. It was hardly possible to defeat this demon using a normal level of power, so the girl was thinking of using the bankai of her ice zanpakuto. The old master asked why the girl's parents didn't tell her that it was impermissible to interfere in the affairs of someone else's family. She had no answer to this question for the demon, since the girl had no parents but was raised by her master. Then Xiao decided to show what her guardian had taught her. Plunging the sword into the ground, the girl began to measure strength with virtue, faith, and righteousness. The beauty called this technique Meilin Guihi first form. The streams of energy around her behaved like crazy, not pushing the monster closer. Ice fangs pierced the demon's body, not giving him even a chance to dodge. The attack was used in such a way that blocks of ice moved from all directions. The damage from the reception was so high that the real body of the old man began to appear behind the demonic nature. The man didn't understand why someone as skilled as Xiao would get involved in his affairs, but she just said that kidnapping was not good. But the pig demon still refused to accept his defeat. Collecting dark energy, the man planned to close the gaps that had formed in his defense. Despite the similarity of concept, the shadow armor from the Garden of Shadows was much more practical. Its durability was higher, and its healing speed was higher. Sensing a Tengu-like spirit from the man's body, the brunette was distracted and missed one serious blow. But even so, the elderly master's hatred continued to grow. The blow was so strong that it knocked down a strong spiritual art master. Xiao could not get up for a while, only watching as the man's strength continued to grow. The main character in Chi-Ki, who was still trying to get rid of the sticky thread, also noticed a strange aura. The girl was wounded, the place was quiet, and the young man had not yet learned how to use force. He was trying to come up with an effective escape plan to save everyone's lives. Then he came up with a brilliant idea. Unlike the situation with Junpei, Tengu cannot refuse help, which means that, as a last resort, he can simply transfer control to him. But it was worth resorting to this method only in the worst-case scenario, because if it gets out of control, it can kill not only the enemy, but also all allies. The young man hurried to help his friend. She looked really bad. Since they didn't have anyone in the squad with healing techniques, they had to go to the hospital as soon as possible. The old man continued to rage behind. The young man took Xiao under the shoulder and wanted to drag him to the bike so that they could get out of here as quickly as possible. However, it was also impossible to leave the demon alone. The nature of his power was very similar to that which Tengen radiates when subjugated. Before the guys could get out, they were attacked by the old master. The girl tried to protect the main character and was hit. The one whom the young man considered invincible was practically killed. The master was too far away and probably did not know about what had happened. There was no one to save them. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Tongtian group inside the laboratory, they were closely monitoring what was happening. They were tracking everyone who took the Xinhuo pills. The scientist wanted to take on this matter on his own, but his assistant, complaining about the old age of the leader, suggested that he rest. Instead, the girl herself planned to be responsible for this incident. After all, she is also a scientist and works in this laboratory. The necessary measures were gradually taken, but testing the product is extremely important before its full use. Next, we are taken back to the battle of the main character. Thanks to his friend, he remained unharmed, but as soon as he saw what the price for this help was, he began to lose control. Chiki planned to intervene because she possessed magic at the required level, unlike the main character. Thanks to the fact that the bird blinded the demon in one eye, it managed to buy time and hand the blade back to Xiaozhui. The girl asked to believe in her and leave. Despite her injuries, she was ready to continue the fight with this monster. Chiki, as well as Mingi's friend, insisted that he quickly leave this place because if they could not help in the battle, they would only create trouble. But the main character, already tired of constantly running away, replayed the words he heard in his head over and over again, hoping to find an alternative option. The guy remembered what Xiong told him. Every time the guy loses consciousness, the essence of Tengu is released and begins to do what it wants. Noticing a suitable stone nearby, and realizing how low the probability of saving everything that had become dear to the young man was, he made a difficult decision for himself. The main character could not allow Xiao to die just like that. He began to hit his head against the stone with all his might, in order to quickly lose consciousness. The little girl who was watching was horrified by Mingi's behavior, and thought that he had gone crazy from fear. However, just a few moments later, the aura emanating from the young man's body began to take on a reddish tint, and steam came out of his mouth. In this state, he was as mad as a shield hero when activating skills from the Sin of Wrath branch. The young man could not influence his body until he returned and did not understand anything. According to Chiki, right now it was the main character who looked most like a monster, because just being near him was incredibly difficult due to spiritual pressure. The old man was already ready to finish off the girl, but noticed the main character slowly walking towards him and intending to kill. He could not believe what he saw, because in front of him was a real Tengu, which was possible to approach precisely thanks to these tablets. The main character's aura more and more resembled the head of a huge wolf, which, as in the legend, could swallow the moon whole. Thanks to the transformation, the old man managed to put a block in time, but Tengu easily broke it, reaching the man. Due to the blow, the old wounds that Xiao had inflicted began to gradually open up. His monster form disappeared as if it had never existed at all. Now that Tengu's power was higher than ever, it seemed that the more time passed, the stronger the monster sealed somewhere in the depths of the young man's soul became. In order to kill the old master, it did not even take 2 blows. The damage done was so great that the demon simply would not come to his senses. But now they were faced with a much more difficult task. Despite the victory, they would have to somehow stop Zhou Mingyi from going on a rampage. Unfortunately, there was no personal Yamato here who could restrain the monster, so Chiki was really very worried about her life and the life of Xiao. Noticing a girl standing in the distance, Tengu ran at full speed in her direction, and the little girl herself could only run away and ask for forgiveness for what she had said. But right before the beast reaches Chiki, one of the regulars of the bar where the girl planned to find herself a counterfeit intervened in the battle. He may not have been as strong as the main character, but he was quite capable of repelling him using the weapon that killed the S-rank ghoul Rise. Following one blow, there was a series of attacks from other guys who went out in search of the baby. While there was an opportunity, taking Chiki under the shoulder, the big brother hurried to leave this place, not understanding why the girl provoked such a monster to fight. Despite their heroic appearance, the guys ran away until the dust storm they raised dissipated and Tengu headed for their souls. The third guy standing on guard warned his nakama. The main character had already risen to his feet and would now begin his attack. Using his maximum speed, Tengu quickly caught up with the people running away from him and was ready to finish off one of them on the spot. But a well-made sledgehammer was able to reduce the force and help the man avoid serious injury. To slow down, the guy with the square used his friend as a bump stop, but the force was so great that they all fell together. The girl considered her friends too useless because each of them, like her, fell with one blow. Xiao came out from behind a cloud of dust. She asked everyone to leave quickly. The main character will return to normal only after he has spent all his strength. Tengu's behavior seemed a little strange to everyone. He seemed to be fighting with the air, completely forgetting about them and the pursuit. The guy was really attacking an invisible enemy, hoping to quickly deal with him and return to the main goal. The young man who remained above asked his friends to hurry, because even though he commands the insects, his reserves will not last for a long time. When the guys realized that they had a chance, they took Xiao with them and went upstairs hoping that everything would end like this. While outside the crater, they continued to observe the destruction the main character was creating. He beat and broke everything that caught his eye. The longer they watched the Tengu's power, the more obvious it became how lucky they were. Kamara and flies are the main weakness of all the strongest. Even One Punch Man could not cope with these buzzing insects at one time. While everyone was having fun, leading the legendary Tengu by the nose, the girl continued to gather strength to recover and, if necessary, give battle to the main character. The young man hoped that this would end as soon as possible, because it is extremely difficult to control such a large number of mosquitoes. The method of containment turned out to be extremely effective, because each time the energy in Zhou Mingyi's body became less and less. When it finally ended, he simply fell exhausted without even regaining his consciousness. A few hours later, everyone successfully reached the house. The master called a doctor so that she could treat the girl's wounds received during the battle. Xiao managed to stay alive only thanks to her constant training and solid experience. If she were lazy, like her mentor, she would have laid her bones there. The specialist finished quickly enough, but insisted that the girl not expose her body to unnecessary stress for a month. The girl was grateful to Aunt Ju, who comes every time and helps them recover if they get into some serious trouble. Xiong and the secretary were worried about the girl, so they closely followed the process and the master even began to cry. There was nothing to worry about anymore. The doctor said that it wouldn't even take 60 days for a full recovery. The guy watching the process praised the girl's diet, saying that she was well built for her age, but other ladies did not appreciate such jokes. The master found something on the spot that bothered him. It was the remains of the medicine that Xiaoju's opponent had taken. The truth was that there was no need to check anymore, because the woman knew what exactly the pill the old man used was. The medicine was called Xinhuo Dan. This tablet allows you to obtain for a while strength commensurate with the strength of strong magicians. In her experiments, Ju had already encountered something similar, but it was not possible to find out who produces these medicines and where they can be purchased. The mentor was worried that this information might be secret, but the agency for which the doctor worked really wanted to protect as much as it could. For this reason, disclosing such information is not a violation, but Xiong tried to prove to the woman that she only revealed this because of their long history of friendship. There was no point in talking further, because the main character still had to be examined. His condition was no less serious. He was chained to a stone in the street, because after the battle he was unable to regain his sanity. Now he looked more like an animal than a man. Previously, the master had already talked about the side effects of power to the young man, but seeing it for himself was quite funny. The secretary could not stop laughing at all. The woman tried to check Zhou Mingyi's condition in another way, but the situation was indeed extremely serious, and some measures had to be taken. The flow of vitality in the boy's body was disrupted. Muscles and veins were severely damaged because of this. All these are consequences of an attempt to seize the power of God. Little Chiki, who appeared out of nowhere, decided to destroy the sad atmosphere and greeted everyone. She suggested turning the main character into a strong undead, but no one seemed to appreciate her joke. The doctor asked to quickly remove the child from here, especially one who offers such stupid ideas, although the baby herself was against this idea. In order to somehow help the situation, Xiao came out of her room. She asked Ju to do everything possible because the guy flew into a rage to save her from the enemy. Realizing that part of the blame lay with her, Chiki wanted to sponsor the treatment of the main character. However, the doctor once again insisted that the stupid child be removed somewhere away from this yard, otherwise she would turn her into a zombie. The secretary decided to stand up for the baby, taking her for herself. She asked the girl not to swear, but she cursed the old woman in a whisper. Then Xiong himself decided to clarify the situation. He said that in their world there are 3 sects specializing in treatment and pharmaceuticals. Zhu Dafu, the specialist they called, was a representative of one of them, namely the Wanhitan clan, also one of the largest owners of branches throughout the country. The woman whom Chiki had just been rude to turned out to be an extremely influential woman because she was not only a good specialist, but she was the sister of the sect leader. The situation was difficult due to the chaotic nature of the damage. Someone was needed who could cleanse the remnants of Tengu's power, which were preventing normal recovery. However, this problem will not be a one-time problem. Since the young man's strength is too great for his body, any manifestation of the divine essence can lead to such a result. Doing something like this is as difficult as stopping your mids feed, so you need a master whose abilities go far beyond the limits of normal people. Realizing that his time had finally come, the master himself decided to intervene in the process because he was a real expert in such matters. Xiao tried to stop her mentor. His wounds could open again and bring quite a lot of unpleasant sensations. But everything had already been decided, so the uncle simply could not help but intervene, directing his energy into the brain of his friend's son. The mentor gradually began to correct the problem. To cope with the power of the Tengu level, it is impossible to hold back. For this reason, the boy released all his spiritual power. As soon as Chiki felt the strength of this man for just a moment, she immediately realized that even after many years of training, she would not be even close to his equal. We are transported to another place, a mysterious temple of warlocks in which the eccentric Li Yunfei has always lived and trained. The head of the clan personally met the young man who decided to challenge Tengu and caused a lot of problems. The boy's excitement was so great that sweat was running down his face, and it was simply impossible to close his eyes. He was worried that he would be killed for this offense. However, the head of his clan was very generous. He accepted the message and decided to spare the boy, hoping that in the future he would fully repay for this. Having received an answer from his brother, the master did not even plan to provide support in case something went wrong with Tengu. Something happened elsewhere. The body of the defeated old master was removed from the site of his last battle and taken to the institute. The specialists were pleased with the work, because what they called the false heart of Tengu was concentrated in the man's body, and it was quite large. Information about the appearance of Tengu also reached this side of the conflict. On this occasion, they held a special meeting, and the girl needed to attend it. It seems that despite the chosen side, the girl also weaved her own intrigues. She planned to resurrect someone, using the power that they are developing here. Their plan was no less perfect than Aizen's plan to obtain Hagioku. No one was supposed to interfere with them in the process. After Xiong put his energy into the protagonist's body, his aura split into several parts. One was blue, the other was red, and the third was white. Soon the young man finally opened his eyes and stopped behaving like one of the dogs that had previously chased him. Despite the miraculous rescue, the master's strength was practically zero. He scolded the protagonist for having, despite all the warnings, still resorted to the power of Tengu. But it was impossible not to praise Xiaojue for saving her, so this time Mingyi will remain without any punishment. Chiki was amazed at the strength of their boss, telling the young man about how many people worked for his miraculous healing. Initially, the guy imagined this wrong, but when he looked at the mentor, he generally realized how serious everything was. Even though the young man had nothing to repay now, he sincerely thanked his uncle for his help and his salvation. The master did not like the fact that the main character began to call him uncle. He was even ready to teach the insolent a lesson, using those small remnants of strength. But Sun Chiki skillfully managed to divert the conversation in a different direction, starting to call Xiong elder brother. It seems that the master liked this address much more. Mingyi himself wanted to join in on this topic, starting to call his mentor senior, but the sincerity of his words was not believed, so Xiong did not fall for this trick. Having gathered his strength, the mentor stood up and addressed the young man. In the future, it would be impossible to maintain the required pace of development and study, so he advised him to quit university as soon as possible. Xiong was even ready to persuade the main character, realizing how incredible the world of wizards and magical creatures seemed to him. However, to his surprise, Zhou Mingyi was ready to take such measures, understanding the irrationality of the combination of these two worlds. At the same time, the young man wanted to protect everyone, but now he couldn't even cope with his own defense, so he was ready for hard training. But at the most crucial moment, the young man still began to doubt. After all, entering this university is extremely difficult, and it is too wasteful to simply leave it. Everyone was sharply disappointed in the guy, because earlier they were sure that after what happened he had finally become more courageous. It seems that everything remained the same as before. In any case, the mentor suggested that they go their separate ways for today, and the next day that the young man begin practicing magic so that he could fully control the monster inside himself. Improvement and practice. Now these will be integral parts of the life of the protagonist. He had no idea how much he would have to learn in this place. The first step on the path to the desired power was to cleanse the mind and body. It was necessary to relax, otherwise the chakra inside the body could not be felt. The incense should have helped this boy, because he had never meditated before, so he was not sure how to do it correctly. Maintaining concentration for a long period of time was quite a challenge, but no one said it would be easy. When the boy began to strain his body or think about something, his girlfriend instantly hit him on the head with a notebook, reminding him of the task at hand. Since even after a while the young man did not begin to feel spiritual strength, Xiao decided to help him with this, offering to be the leader in the training. First of all, it was necessary to find the necessary points responsible for circulation, as well as increasing strength. The beauty was not sure where they were, because she relied on the research of her master. Judging by the records, several types of energy were supposed to be stored inside the young man at once. Releasing a specific one was the main task of this teaching. When using Tengu's mana, the guy will be able to temporarily increase his characteristics, but if he makes even one mistake, he will again be swallowed up by his own beast. Continuing to understand Shun's notes, the girl concentrated energy in the lower abdomen of the main character. This was necessary to identify the flow of spiritual power. The words in this manual were like poetry, so being carried away by reading, Xiao didn't even notice how she said the nonsense written below. The wording below looked extremely strange. Probably their mentor was in a hurry and wrote some hieroglyph incorrectly, but then the girl should have recognized the peculiarity of the master's handwriting. But even though, in the girl's opinion, the text looked like some new, incomprehensible work by Junji Ito, the main character, like a true connoisseur, saw something more in it. After some time, the energy of the spirit world nevertheless succumbed to the influence of the young man. He not only learned to feel it, but was also able to release a small part. It was already late, so Xiao planned to go to bed. She asked not to stay too long practicing and closed the doors after Mingy finished. The next morning came. This time little Cheeky spent the night in the brunette's room, and the master, as always, woke up first of all. He wanted to wake up his student, because if she continued to sleep, all the fried dough would be sold, and there would be nothing left for them. But when he turned around, he saw the main character. However, Mingy's face this time indicated that he would soon turn into an infected person from The Last of Us. The insect coil ran out at night, so he was all bitten by mosquitoes. The change in perception due to training worried the protagonist a little, because he clearly felt every person who followed them. Xiao praised her friend for such progress, but reminded him how harmful it is not to sleep at night, asking him not to resort to such measures anymore, and to get a good night's sleep. The girl explained that many of those whom the boy sensed were magicians from other clans who came to look at Tengu. But since this territory is under the control of their boss, no one will dare to attack or even get close because the master will know about it instantly. After hearing this story, the main character began to admire their uncle even more, because he is a really cool dude if you think about it more. Cheeky, who had just woken up, was already waiting for them in the courtyard. This time, the trip for fried dough turned out to be not so problematic. The little girl wanted to attract the attention of her new friends by telling them that she had one very important secret that she would share if they asked. But the guys were busy planning their next training sessions, so they simply ignored Tsitsi, continuing to ignore her. The girl herself was very upset by this fact. As soon as the little girl named the amount that could be obtained thanks to her knowledge, this information became extremely interesting for Xiao. The young man was extremely upset when he found out how easily a girl could leave him and go do something else if she was simply offered good money for it. The little girl herself expected to catch Mingy on this hook, and not her sister, so she was very surprised. The company at the table grew larger, but everyone at the table continued to eat in silence as if they were strangers to each other. However, the master himself was even more interested in the proposal than Xiao, because $7,000 are not lying around, and with this money he could complete all levels of the battle pass. The girl was interested in the pill that their opponent took last time. With the help of the general locker room system, she managed to get the exact root of the person associated with her. This system was actually the name of one person who traded data to everyone, and about everyone, so no one touched him, because he didn't have his favorites. While the guys were discussing how they could get the same amount of money on a regular basis, little Cheeky intervened, who was very angry that this couple never listened to her. All they know at this moment is that the medicine gives a power extremely similar to that released by the young man's body at the time of turning into Tengu, but now they were too weak to get involved in it. Since the young man refused this idea, the girl was disappointed in him, although she herself had not expected anything before. Then Chiki decided to turn to Xiao, inviting her to go and beat the bad guys. But the mentor spoke out against it, recalling the wound the brunette had previously received. Now she could not go on a mission, since the wounds could open again. Then the little girl hoped for the boss because if he took on the task on his own, then the villains wouldn't even have a chance. Only the uncle's condition was just as bad, if not worse. Due to the waste of energy helping Mingya, he is still coughing up blood. Everyone was able to find something to do, so Chiki was very upset. No one wanted to start cleaning Gotham from bastards and simply terrible people with her. Realizing that she could only rely on herself, the little girl said how upset she was by her friend's refusal, and then decided to take on this matter together with her feathered partner. Despite her salvation, she no longer wanted to see the main character. The rest received a smaller portion of hatred. On the way from Little Sun, the little girl continued to sulk at her new acquaintances, even if their arguments seemed extremely logical and correct. Soon, the one who was supposed to provide the girl with a medicine that could give Tengu unstoppable power came to the place. The man was thinking about his profession. He had previously been an economist, but difficult life circumstances forced him to change the vector of his development and end up here. He didn't like doing this kind of thing, but if he paid the money he received from the sale of the drug for the house, his life would definitely improve. Very surprised, the supplier did not know how to react because a teenager was sitting in front of him and demanded to see the medicine in advance. In order for the deal to take place, the bartender stood up for the baby and convinced the man that, despite his age, his buyer still had money. After receiving confirmation from another person, the supplier slowly approached the girl and handed her the ampule containing the product. Having finally gotten to the pill, Chiki asked if it was possible to use more than one capsule at a time. But since the girl was still young, the man suggested spending time on training without resorting to medicine. Those unprepared for this power would simply lose their minds forever. After thinking a little, Chiki asked whether the supplier could also get a prescription for this medicine, since the informant had previously included this service in the list. But the supplier did not plan to part with his life, so he immediately abandoned such a stupid and extremely dangerous idea several times in a row. To get to the treasured secret, the girl offered to provide one of the houses in the nearest area as payment. They all belonged to her family. The man couldn't answer now, but this was a great chance for him to get his own home, not even on credit. The temptation was too great, because many people want to settle in a big city or school district, but there are much more prospects here. The bartender turned to Chiki and decided to ask her if she really had become a good deed, if she was offering something like that. But the little girl only boasted that, unlike her parents, she does business honestly. It seems that the man decided to accept the offer. He always dreamed of getting his own house in such a place. Perhaps this dream applies to all the poor. The supplier's joy did not last so long. Almost immediately, people came to him who knew about what the old man had done. Having access to medications, the man falsified expiration dates in order to be able to receive some of them for free and then sell them. A boy was passing nearby. This old man was an important person for him, so the young man was glad to meet him again. He didn't understand what was happening because the man was just standing, and in front of him there were several people in formal clothes. The young man decided not to intervene right away. When he called out to the old man, he asked him to run quickly because such an opportunity would not present itself soon. True, the guys from the service also didn't plan to wait for something. The bald one quickly put the old man down. They didn't even have to use the power of spirits. The partner planned to take care of the child because no one should have known about them, even if not particularly. But the brown-haired man decided to do his job with honors. Just before any of them could take any action, the boy was already near them. Besides, he was a magic user, and he wasn't going to let some no-names get away with killing the old man, so he decided to attack first. His blow turned out to be really powerful. Perhaps now he was stronger than most DC heroes, but the bald man was still able to hold back the attack. However, the impact force put into the blow was more than enough to throw the bandit back several tens of meters. Next, the young man planned to kill the brown-haired man. His strength defied explanation, but it was not possible to escape from this boy. Having dealt with the bad guys, he hurried to his old man. After all, he was hit hard. Lao Da could barely breathe. The man gave the phone and also asked to take care of his child and wife. Despite the fact that the man was not a fighter, he understood that there was little time left. The young man did not understand what was happening at all, but promised the old man that he would definitely save everyone. Meanwhile, a satisfied Chiki was driving back home. She was looking forward to how everyone else would recognize her strength and finally begin to pay attention to her requests. But she had no idea at that moment how serious her mistake would be, because a person from the organization was already next to her. Having called little son, the girl already began to brag about how quickly she got everything she needed without the help of strangers. Suddenly, her driver pretended to be the main character of the anime Initial Die and began to perform at every turn, forcing the baby inside to fly from side to side. At first, Tsitsi liked this and continued to talk. The girl rather wanted to share the fruits of the work done with her friends. True, as soon as the baby hit the car door, she asked Shibo to drive a little more carefully. Looking out the window, Chiki realized that their destination had changed dramatically. They were definitely going to a place unknown to her. The second call was a message from an informant. The deal was at risk, which means that someone outsider found out about it. Having put two and two together, the girl turned to her driver and asked what would happen next. A personal driver took the baby into the wilderness. Ahead of them, there were definitely bad guys waiting who wanted to get either money or a pill. Trying to play dumb, the little girl blamed her driver for everything, saying that he was definitely planning to kill her. She even asked for help from these villains. The guy, who looked exactly like Hikari from the Magic Battle, promised not to harm the little girl if she told him what she knew. Using the maximum power of her acting, the girl called her uncles the real heroes and her saviors, and then showing her real face, she pissed, because the man's face showed how touched he was. The bad guy was very unhappy with the way Chiki behaved, but the driver insisted that the girl really had the necessary knowledge, having previously chatted about it. This was of little concern to the captain of this bandit group. One of his subordinates dug a hole as they had originally agreed. At this moment, Chiki, who understood her position, was ready to give up the light and accept the darkness, just so as not to be buried in the forest, who knows where. Noticing the little girl's fear, the man finally hoped to get answers because, after all, the girl really knew the truth and could tell it to them. Then Chiki only added that she is a fair partner who does not reveal the secrets of those with whom she does business. But she had already known about the harmful pill in circulation for a long time. This infuriated the captain. Before she was pulled out and buried, the girl decided to use her spiritual powers and fight back, even if the situation was a losing one. But she could be a winner. The bandits quickly realized that they had made a mistake by underestimating the owner of the information due to his age. Now they were within reach of Slya Tsitsi. Small stones flew at the surrounding guys over and over again, but no one could notice what exactly was happening, as if they were appearing from nowhere. Then, using his own strength, the commander was able to repel one of the shells that was aimed in his direction. Only after a small stone, the same young man flew out who, like Chiki, planned to eradicate evil from this world and achieve harmony among all people. A few blows were enough to deal with the leader. It seems the group was not so serious, but even so it was too early to relax. In fact, the little girl was not trying to somehow fight back the bandits, but simply wanted to get rid of an insect that had flown into the car. Soon she finally paid attention to the stranger who started a real brawl. He easily scattered the adult men, remaining the winner in the end. Having received a signal from the baby, the main character and Xiao arrived at the scene. They could hardly get to the right place through the bushes and trees. Next, they will have to move on foot. The young man regretted that he still did not take with him the machete that lay in their living room. The guys arrived much later, so they didn't see that battle, but they saw some suspicious people loading stretchers with the wounded onto buses. There could be no doubt, but the young man still decided to check with his girlfriend before starting the fight whether these were really bad guys. The enemy's reaction indicated that it would be impossible to avoid the fight, even if Xiao's wounds had not fully healed. But it was quite possible to fight while restraining one's strength. Her opponents were real weaklings, so she was able to defeat one after another without even resorting to complex techniques or movements. Getsuga Tensho divided the bandits into several groups. Some of them decided to ignore the girl and attack the main character. Previously, this could have caused some problems, but a few days of hard training would pay off and Mingi wanted to test it out quickly. It was not so difficult to use the technique in training, but in a real battle, the young man had never had the opportunity to use the dragon's fist. Due to the large reserve of strength, he was not sure that he would be able to restrain himself. But the demonstrated super blow turned out to be too weak. The main character was in vain relying on an art that he had not fully mastered. Under no circumstances was it possible for the young man to lose consciousness, so he ran from side to side, hoping for Xiao's help in this matter. His big trick, unfortunately, turned out to be useless. But the girl herself had a lot of work to do, so she again explained to the boy exactly how to use his power, and then told him to try again. The main character was a little doubtful, because if he stopped, he was guaranteed to get hit on the head. But the beauty asked him to just trust her and try. Nevertheless, having decided to take a risk, Mingi stopped and turned towards his pursuer, thereby leaving him with no choice, pan or perish. Having charged more energy into his fist, the guy seemed to shoot from a cannonball. His blow was so huge that it was impossible to dodge it even if he wanted to. However, calculating the height was still a difficult task for the main character, so the bad guy managed to escape from under attack at the very last moment. The guys did not want to continue the battle after such a demonstration of strength, although the young man did not plan to take their opinion into account. So, as if from a machine gun, he began to shoot with his energy. Watching what was happening, Xiao realized how hopeless her partner was. At this rate, he would quickly spend all his scent of spiritual power and would be left without strength. Not only the girl understood this, but also Mingi himself and his opponent. From the young man's blows, it was also clear that he was acting on improvisation. The boy's blow could also easily be blocked and counterattacked. The bad guy noticed this. He hoped to knock out Mingi after he got close, but with the help of her magical powers, the girl immobilized the enemy, giving her friend a good moment for a knockout. Evil like an Akuma, Xiao continued interrogating the culprits, trying to find out where exactly their friend was. After all, they came here to save her. The young man discovered a dug hole nearby. Since they were avoiding unnecessary victims, an excellent plan for revenge for Chiki was born in his head. They simply buried all the bad guys up to their necks, calling the police to the scene, hoping that they would never meet these guys again. Meanwhile, the little girl herself and her new friend were already racing around the city on a bicycle. She told him her story, and the young man, who promised to help everyone, could not pass by. This tramp could not be called ordinary, because he pedaled so fast that anyone from windbreaker and cycling in general would envy his speed. The little girl decided to take full advantage of this trip. In addition to spending a pleasant time with her brother, she could annoy her parents by sending them photos. Only the boy asked to thank not him, but the one who was the original customer. This man was the tramp's older brother, and it was because of his request that he ended up in the right place. Despite the deeds he had to resort to due to lack of money, the man was a real hero who helped out both the young man and his friends many times. Their meeting happened quite unexpectedly. When the guy was looking for a place to spend the night this time, a cheerful man approached him and offered to work. In addition, he knew about the world of magicians, and for certain reasons, he even had instructions on how to master the skill of wielding spiritual power. The brother taught the young man a lot and passed away so early, but Chiki was amazed at the fact that there were even worse parents in the world than her own. She also expressed doubts about her brother, because the young man was paid very little, and all the knowledge obtained from books about spiritual arts is publicly available on the internet. No one even tries to comprehend it. The guy couldn't drive past the filled trash can. Like all the Stardew Valley players, thanks to communication with the young man, the little girl found out that the tablet was created in the Tangian group. Since this was on such a large scale, the little girl assumed that she could not leave the tramp alone. She must protect him and get more information. But the young man handed Tsitsi over to the first police station he met on the road. The girl did not buy the joke, but the policeman was already aware that this was a lost child. He said goodbye to the baby, hoping that they would meet again in the future. But for now, he had to fulfill the request of his older brother and save his family. Chiki's father came to Little Sunshine to leave an order to search for her biological daughter. The reward will be $700,000 in cash. The ringing of gold coins is what Xiang would like to hear most of all in his life. Without even thinking, he accepted the order and was ready to begin fulfilling it even personally. The man, over a glass of tea, talked about his love affairs. The secretary was a little skeptical about this, but the boss was passionate as never before. Having looked a little closer, Father Chiki recognized the woman as the eldest daughter of the Zhao family, but she made it clear that she had no plans to return back, and it was better to forget about it altogether. Before the man could leave, the girl herself came to the agency from the police station, very upset that her prince rode off into the sunset without her. The major client was pleased with the work done. He, of course, had heard that there was a sorcerer of incredible power working in the Little Sun, but he did not count on such an effect. Meanwhile, the young man was finally able to meet his older brother's family. They were happy to see him, because Lao Da had told them a lot about the talented young man. They were ready to say goodbye to their lives, because so many scary people with weapons showed up at their house. But the young man came in time and saved the girl and child from trouble. The guy, as ordered, sent his family on the train. He was glad that he was finally able to pay off his brother, having repaid such a serious debt. One of the bad guys noticed that the other group had failed to capture the Lao Da family. He was extremely dissatisfied with this outcome. The previous day ended with jubilation on the part of the master, but the main character felt like a squeezed lemon due to the amount of energy previously spent. As always, brushing his teeth before going to the toilet, the young man trained himself to check the sign several times before entering. This time the doors were completely open, so without any doubt, Joe Mingy went inside, preparing to empty the jug. However, this time he came across not a beautiful girl, but an uncle reading a newspaper.